What if I told you that the Supreme Court just gutted the Voting Rights Act provision that forced red states to draw guaranteed Democrat districts for 60 years? That red state governors are now calling emergency special sessions to redistrict and could hand Republicans up to 19 additional House seats before November, and that over 2 million voters have left the Democrat Party since 2020. While the New York Times is openly warning that Democrats may cease to be a viable national party within years. Stick around, because what happened next will blow your mind. This might be the single most devastating week the Democrat Party has ever faced, and I do not use those words lightly, because what is happening right now is not one piece of bad news. It is not a single court ruling or a single election loss or a single poll going the wrong direction. It is an avalanche, a convergence of structural political forces all hitting the Democrat Party at the exact same moment. And when you see the full scope of what just happened and what is about to happen next, you will understand why serious analysts on both sides of the aisle are now openly questioning whether the Democrat Party can survive as a nationally competitive institution. The Supreme Court just dropped the hammer. Red state governors are mobilizing. Millions of voters are walking out the door. And the redistricting tidal wave that is about to sweep across the American South is going to redraw the political map in ways that the Democrat Party cannot reverse, cannot recover from, and cannot survive. If you believe that 60 years of racially gerrymandered Democrat districts in red states was always unconstitutional and that the Supreme Court was right to finally put an end to it, smash that like button right now. Every click helps us spread the word that the political realignment is accelerating faster than anyone predicted, and the Democrats have no way to stop it. Because by the end of this video, you will understand exactly what the Supreme Court just ruled and why it is a political earthquake, which red states are already moving to redistrict, and how many seats they could pick up. What the current House math looks like when you factor in all the new maps. Why over 2 million voters have left the Democrat Party, and why the bleeding is accelerating, and why the combination of redistricting, voter migration, and the 2030 census is building a permanent Republican congressional majority for the foreseeable future. Now let me start with the Supreme Court ruling, because this is the decision that changes everything. The Supreme Court just handed down what is known as the Callais decision. The case was specific to Louisiana, but the implications extend to every red state in the entire country. And what the court effectively did is gut Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Section 2 is the provision that has been used for over 60 years to force red states to create guaranteed Democrat congressional districts by deliberately manipulating the racial composition of those districts. The theory behind Section 2 was that majority-minority districts were necessary to ensure racial representation in Congress. The practical effect was that deep red states across the South were legally required to draw congressional maps that carved out safe Democrat seats, regardless of how the state's population actually voted. Red states with overwhelming Republican majorities were forced to hand Democrats guaranteed seats in Congress, not because those seats reflected the political will of the voters, but because a federal mandate required racial gerrymandering that happened to produce Democrat victories. For 60 years, this provision has been one of the foundations of Democrat power in Congress. Without these racially gerrymandered districts, Democrats would have lost their foothold in the South decades ago. These are not seats that Democrats win by persuading voters. These are seats that Democrats hold because federal law required the maps to be drawn in a way that guaranteed them. The Supreme Court just removed that guarantee, and the dominoes are already falling. Now let me tell you what is happening across the red states, because the response to this ruling has been immediate, aggressive, and coordinated. Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry moved first. He has already suspended the May 16th primaries in Louisiana so that the state can redraw its congressional map before the midterms. Louisiana is not waiting. They are not studying the ruling. They are not convening committees or commissioning reports. They are acting. Right now. The new maps are being drawn as we speak, and those new maps are expected to net the Republican Party 1 to 2 additional seats. Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves has called a special legislative session to redistrict his state. Mississippi is ready to go. They were waiting for this ruling, and they are not going to waste a single day. Mississippi could deliver 1 to 2 additional Republican seats. Alabama is preparing to do the same. Tennessee is moving. South Carolina has already been in the redistricting pipeline. Georgia could deliver additional seats, and the entire South is about to follow in a domino effect that will sweep through every red state that was previously handcuffed by Section 2 of the VRA. The estimates for the total pickup range from 12 seats on the conservative end to 19 seats, according to Politico's analysis. 12 to 19 additional Republican seats from redistricting alone, added to the maps that are already in place, before a single vote is cast in November. Let me put those numbers in context, because when you add them to what has already happened, the picture is staggering. Right now, according to the University of Virginia's crystal ball analysis, Republicans hold a relatively safe 211 House seats. Democrats are going into the midterms with 209. That 211 already includes the 4 new seats from Florida's redistricting. Governor DeSantis just signed the new map into law after the Florida legislature passed it overwhelmingly. Those 4 seats are locked in. The 209 for Democrats does not include the 4 seats from Virginia's gerrymandering referendum because that referendum is currently being challenged before the Virginia Supreme Court and appears to be on the verge of being struck down. If Virginia's 4 seats are invalidated, Democrats drop to 205. So the baseline heading into the post-VRA redistricting wave is Republicans at 211, Democrats at somewhere between 205 and 209, depending on Virginia. Now add the VRA redistricting. If red states pick up even the conservative estimate of 12 additional seats, Republicans jump from 211 to 223. 223. That is 5 seats above the 218 majority threshold. That means Republicans would not just hold the House, they would have a comfortable cushion, a majority that can absorb defections, a majority that can pass legislation without needing every single member present, a majority that is structurally secure. And if the redistricting pickups reach the higher end of the estimates, 19 seats, Republicans could be sitting at 230 going into November. That is a majority so commanding that the Democrats would need to win virtually every toss-up seat in the country and flip multiple safe Republican districts just to get close. We would be looking at not just holding the House. We would be looking at gaining seats in a midterm. Only the 4th time in the last century that the party in power has done that. A historic accomplishment that puts this midterm in the company of Roosevelt in '34, Clinton in '98, and Bush in 2002. Now, let me tell you about what is happening inside the Democrat Party, because the redistricting wave is only half the story. The other half is the mass exodus of voters that is accelerating at a pace that has the New York Times sounding alarm bells. Between 2020 and 2024, Democrats lost approximately 2.1 million registered voters across 30 states. 2.1 million people looked at the Democrat Party, decided they no longer wanted to be associated with it, and changed their registration. During that same period, Republicans gained 2.4 million voters. That is a 4.5 million voter registration swing in the Republicans' favor in just 4 years. And the bleeding has not stopped. Since late 2025, the trends have only gotten worse for Democrats. In every single state that tracks voter registration by party, Democrats have consistently been losing and Republicans have consistently been gaining. Every state, without exception. The latest numbers tell the story in vivid detail. Over 20,000 West Virginia Democrats just switched to the Republican Party ahead of their primaries. 20,000 in a single state in a single registration period. In North Carolina, 2 Democrat state representatives, Carla Cunningham and Nasif Majeed, just announced that they have left the Democrat Party. They are now independents who will be voting in alignment with the Republican supermajority. These defections are happening at every level: voters, state legislators, judges, professors. The 4-to-1 ratio that we have been tracking, 4 Democrats switching to Republican for every 1 Republican switching to Democrat, is holding steady, and in many states, it is accelerating. The New York Times, which is not exactly a conservative outlet, is now openly reporting that if these trends continue, the Democrat Party will no longer be a viable national party in a matter of just a few years. That is not a conservative commentator making a prediction. That is the New York Times looking at the data and acknowledging what the data shows. The trajectory is extinction. And here is why the Democrats cannot stop it. Because the 3 pillars that their congressional majority depends on are all under assault simultaneously. Pillar 1, racially gerrymandered districts. The Supreme Court just gutted the legal foundation for those districts. Red states are redistricting them out of existence as we speak. This pillar is crumbling. Pillar 2, amnesty for illegal aliens who would become reliable Democrat voters. President Trump has shut the border. The Save America Act is moving through Congress. The political appetite for amnesty is at an all-time low. 80% of Americans oppose giving illegals a path to voting. This pillar is blocked. Pillar 3, preventing voter ID requirements that would make it harder to exploit the system. The Supreme Court is poised to rule on mail-in ballot counting. The Save America Act includes proof of citizenship requirements. 90% of Americans support voter ID. This pillar is being dismantled. Every single pillar that supports the Democrat majority rests on siding with a tiny, radical minority against the overwhelming will of the American people. Amnesty for illegals, 80% oppose it. Racially gerrymandered districts, 80% oppose it. Banning voter ID, 90% support voter ID. The Democrat recipe for power requires them to take positions that are opposed by massive supermajorities of the American people on every single issue. The Republican majority, by contrast, rests on giving the American people exactly what they want: secure borders, voter ID, fair maps that reflect how the population actually votes, common sense policies that command 80 and 90% support. The structural advantage is not subtle, it is overwhelming, and it is permanent. Now let me show you why this is not just a midterm story, because there is a longer game at play that makes everything we have discussed so far look like a preview. The 2030 census is coming, and when the census data triggers the next reapportionment, the shifts that are already underway are going to be codified into the political map for the next decade. Red states have been exploding in population over the last 10 years. Texas, Florida, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Arizona, Georgia, all surging, all adding residents by the hundreds of thousands. Meanwhile, blue states have been hemorrhaging population. New York, California, Illinois, Massachusetts. People are leaving these states in massive numbers, taking their families, their businesses, and their tax revenue with them. When the reapportionment happens, red states are projected to gain approximately 12 additional congressional seats and electoral votes. Blue states will lose them. 12 seats transferred from Democrat territory to Republican territory. Not because of gerrymandering, not because of legal maneuvers, because people moved. Real human beings made real decisions about where they wanted to live, and they chose red states. So think about the cumulative effect. 12 to 19 seats from post-VRA redistricting before the midterms. Another 12 seats from the 2030 census reapportionment. That is potentially 24 to 31 additional Republican seats over the next few years, added to a base that is already at 211. We are not talking about holding a narrow majority. We are talking about a structural Republican advantage in the House of Representatives that could last for a generation. A majority so large and so structurally secure that Democrats would need to fundamentally transform their party, their platform, and their coalition just to become competitive again. And there is no sign they are willing to do that. They are doubling down on the same radical positions that are driving voters away. More open borders, more identity politics, more attacks on voter ID, more of the same failing formula that has cost them 2.1 million voters in 4 years. Now let me address the one remaining question that people keep asking. Can the Democrats fight back through redistricting of their own? The answer is yes, technically, but the gains are minimal and they are approaching their ceiling. Democrats can squeeze out a few more seats from California. They already grabbed 5 through their referendum. They can try to eliminate the last remaining Republican seats in deep blue states like Oregon. They can try to gerrymander a couple more seats in New York and Illinois. But here is the fundamental problem. They have already used most of their redistricting ammunition. The blue states that could be gerrymandered have already been gerrymandered. California has already been squeezed. New York has already been squeezed. Illinois has already been squeezed. There is not much left to take. Meanwhile, the red states are just getting started. The VRA ruling opened up an entirely new front that did not exist before this week. Dozens of seats across the South that were previously untouchable because of federal mandate are now available for redistricting. The asymmetry is brutal. Democrats are scraping for 1 or 2 seats in states they have already maximized. Republicans are looking at 12 to 19 seats in states they have barely touched. And even the seats Democrats do gain through redistricting are meaningless if the voters who live in those districts are leaving the state. You can draw the most perfectly gerrymandered map in the world, but if the people who were supposed to vote in those districts have moved to Florida or Texas, the map is worthless. A congressional seat without voters to fill it is a seat that flips the moment turnout drops or the population shifts. The Democrats are trying to rearrange deck chairs on the Titanic while the hull is taking on water from every direction. Redistricting losses, voter registration losses, population losses, defection losses, fundraising losses, Supreme Court losses. Every single structural force in American politics is moving against them simultaneously. And they have no strategy, no plan, and no leader capable of reversing any of it. This is why the New York Times is sounding the alarm. This is why serious analysts are using the word extinction. This is why the single most devastating week in Democrat Party history is not an exaggeration, but an understatement. The Supreme Court just removed the legal shield that protected Democrat seats in red states for 60 years. Red state governors are redistricting those seats out of existence right now. Over 2 million voters have already left the party. Millions more are leaving their blue states entirely. The 2030 census is going to strip even more seats and electoral votes from the Democrat column. And the three pillars of Democrat power, amnesty, racial gerrymandering, and opposition to voter ID, are all positions that 80 to 90% of the American people reject. The Democrat Party is not having a bad week. It is watching the structural foundations of its political power get demolished one by one in real time. And every attempt it makes to fight back only accelerates the collapse because its response to losing voters is to double down on the very positions that are driving voters away. The permanent Republican majority is not a dream. It is not a fantasy. It is a mathematical projection based on redistricting data, voter registration trends, migration patterns, census projections, and Supreme Court rulings that have already been handed down. The numbers are real, the trends are measurable, and the trajectory is clear. The future of American politics is being decided right now, this week, in courtrooms and state houses and voter registration offices across the country. And every single decision, every single data point, every single trend is moving in one direction, toward a Republican majority that is built to last. Don't stop here. Red states are redistricting in real time. The Virginia Supreme Court ruling could drop any day, and the 2030 census is going to reshape the map for a generation. Click on the next video and join us as we continue to cover the most significant political transformation in modern American history and every development that is building toward a permanent Republican congressional majority.